Hello and welcome to section 8.2, where we will be discussing the quadratic formula. Yes. Oh man, listen, there is no weapon more powerful in mathematics than the quadratic formula. When you are solving quadratics, you can factor, but that's pretty low on our powerfulness scale. That's the weak way to do it, okay? There's root solving, which is okay, but it doesn't work 100% of the time. Completing the square is cool, but again, it probably only has a 75% kill rate. The formula that does it all, the supreme formula, is the quadratic formula. It works 100% of the time. If you wanted to compare quadratic formula to other things, it would look like this. It would be like the Gucci of handbags. It would be the Bugatti of cars. It would be the Ronaldo or Messi. I don't know who you like more, but it would be the Ronaldo or Messi of soccer. Okay, it's the Excalibur of swords. It's the golden gun in Golden Eye. It's the Leahona of the Book of Mormon, and it's the Rick Astley of Rick Rolls. Okay. This is the formula. It is the supreme power when it comes to mathematics, okay? I love this song. You're getting rickrolled right now. Let's do it. Woo! Okay, that's enough of that. I had to rickroll you at least once, right? Okay. The quadratic formula. Let's show you how we get this formula and where it comes from. If we wanted to solve this problem right here, ax squared plus bx plus c, without any numbers, and we just wanted to solve it with letters, we could do this using what we learned in the last section. In step number 1, when we were completing the square, actually we called it step 0, we had to have a 1 in the front value. Right here we have an a. So the first thing we would need to do if we were going to solve this symbolically is divide each value by a, including the 0. Okay, here the a's cancel out and we're left with x squared plus bax plus c over a equals 0, because 0 divided by a is just 0. Okay. In step number 1, we said we need to get the x's to the left, everything else to the right. So I need to move that CA over. So I'm going to minus CA to both sides. Okay, that gets me x squared plus BAX equals a negative CA. Okay, that's good so far. In step 2, we said to complete the square, you had to create the poison. The poison. Dun, dun, dun. To do that, you've got to take the middle term, which is b, divide it by 2 and square it. Now in this problem though, our b is b over a. So I'm going to take b over a. I'm going to have to divide it by 2 and square it. Now that might confuse some people. How do you do b divided by a all over 2? We'll call 2 over 1 so that it's a fraction divided by a fraction. So then we flip and multiply, and we end up getting b over 2a, and then we have to square it. Again, we flipped and multiplied. This is the poison. B over 2a squared is the poison, and we'll need to add it to both sides. That's what we said in step 3. Add to both sides. This is a review from last lesson. So I would get x squared plus b over ax plus this value. Let's see. Should we square it? Let's square it. That would be b squared over, and 2a squared, I'd have to square the 2. That's 4. And a squared is a squared. And so that's what we are adding to both sides. B squared over 4a squared. Oh man, we're going to need more room. Let's move down. Here we go. Now we said when we do this, we actually get to factor this. This will be a factor. So when we factor the left side, we get exactly half of the middle term. So half of b over a is just b over 2a, and that would be squared, equals, oh, here we're going to want to get a common denominator because we've got 2 fractions. Here we've got 4a squared, here I've got 4a. So this side's missing a 4a, and that means we need a 4a on top. And that gets me negative 4ac plus b squared all over 4a squared, the common denominator. Ooh, that looks like chapter 6. We did that in chapter 6. In fact, I don't like the negative value first. I'm going to switch these around. Instead of putting negative 4ac plus b squared, I'm going to put b squared minus 4ac. It's nicer to have the negative after. Okay, good. Step number 5, it's time to root solve. Root solve. And to root solve this, we're going to square root the left and square root the right. When I square root the left, I'm just left with x plus b over 2a. Here I get a plus or minus. The top stays squared, b squared minus 4ac. But the bottom, I can square root the 4a squared. Square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of a squared is just a. Okay, we are really close to having this perfect. Let's go ahead and scroll down here. My last thing I've got to do is now solve. That's the last step. I got to get x by itself. So I'm going to minus the b. I'm going to minus b over 2a to both sides. So I get negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And since these have the same common denominator, we can write the formula like this. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, since they have the common denominator. And this right here, notice that we use like chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7 in being able to help us create this formula. This right here is the quadratic formula. It's even got a song. You're going to want to memorize this. If there's any math formula you memorize, it's this one right here. It's going to help you in your future math classes. I like to do it to Pop Goes the Weasel. It sounds a little like this. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You should sing with me. Oh my goodness. Here we go on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Oh, you should call up your mom or your dad or your roommate or your boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, spouse, I don't know, to sing this song to at least 3 people. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. My first daughter, when she was born, this is the song I would sing to her to help her fall asleep at night. Oh, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. With this formula, we can now solve any quadratic we want. I can write any numbers up here I want. 3x squared plus 5x minus 7 equals 0. Let's do it. Step number 1, you do have to be able to use the quadratic formula, it's got to be equal to 0. Step number 2, you want to list out what your a, b, and c values are. Here my a is 3, my b is 5, and my c is negative 7. Step 3, sing the song. Sing song. So here we go. I'm going to do negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now b squared would be 5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times a times c, 4 times a times c, all over 2a, 2 times 3, which comes out to be 6, right? All over 2a. Now inside the root, that's the next thing you've got to do. Step 4 will be the simplify inside root. Simplify inside the root. Be careful with the negatives here. This comes with a negative 4ac. So in this situation, we actually get negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25. And when I do negative 4 times 3 times negative 7, it actually becomes plus 84 all over 6. And then we can go ahead and finish by adding those roots together. 84, or adding the numbers in the root together. 84 plus 25 is 109. So the final answer is negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 109 over 6. There they are. Those are our answers. We could look to simplify the root here, but 109, nothing comes out of it. You could go to decimal answers if you wanted to. Basically, what we would do in that situation is I would type in -5 plus the square root of 109. I would go ahead and push the equals button and then divide it by 6. When I do that, I get the answer of 0.906. And then I would do -5 minus the square root of 109 and then divide by 6. And that comes out to be -2.57. These are the approximate answers. If we were doing like a word problem, we'd want real answers. You wouldn't want to report your answer like this in a word problem. You never tell your boss, hey, boss, we need to make -5 plus or minus square root 109 over 6 cupcakes. And that doesn't make sense. You would want to go to decimal answers. You can do that by doing -5 plus root 109, getting an answer, and then dividing it by 6, and then doing -5 minus square root of 109, getting an answer for that top, and then dividing it by 6. It's time to go to the boards. Let's go ahead and pause the video now and give these two problems a try. Follow our steps here, and don't forget the formula. Oh, I hope you memorize it. It's -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Good luck. Welcome back. Let's go. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start this problem. My a equals 6, my b equals 7, my c equals -5. So I'm going to sing the song, -b plus or minus the square root of b squared. B squared is 7 squared, that's 49, minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. 2 times 6 is 12. I gotta simplify inside the root here. I'm gonna just use my calculator. What is 49 minus 4 times 6 times -5? I'm gonna do it all at once. That's 169 over 12. Well, that's interesting because 169, if you start breaking that up, it's 13 and 13. This root comes out exact. So I get -7 plus or minus 13. The square root of 169 is 13, all over 12. I'm going to keep going here. I've got to do -7 plus 13 over 12 and -7 minus 13 over 12 because there's two answers. -7 plus 13 divided by 12. Oh, that's 1/2. Cool. And -7 minus 13 divided by 12 comes out to be -5/3. Those are my two answers for number 1. You might have stopped here. I hope you kept going. Don't forget, keep going. If this isn't a square root, you're going to just keep going until you get the answer. Okay, let's try number 2. My A is 2, my B is 3, and my C is 4. Okay, so it's -b plus or minus the square root of b squared, that's 9, minus 4 times a, which is 2 times c, which is 4, all over 2 times a. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, let's work on simplifying that root. Simplifying the root's the hardest part. 9 minus 4 times 2 times 4. That's a -23 all over 4. Whoa! We have a negative inside a root. Now 23 doesn't break down. There's no numbers so there's no weddings going on there. But we do have a negative inside the root, and so therefore we need to pull it out and make it an I. So I'm going to put -3 plus or minus I root 23 all over 4. That's my answer there. You might have put the I after that. That's fine too. Usually we're going to put I in front, especially when it's written in this quadratic formula situation. That's just kind of more common. Nice work. The quadratic formula has lots of real-life applications. For example, anything under the influence of gravity forms a parabola, okay? Anything that's tossed in the air is going to be parabolic. And so, in fact, one of the basic physics formulas is this right here. The height of an object is -16t squared plus its initial velocity, so how hard you throw it up or what speed it's launched at, plus the initial position. If you have to take physics, this will be one of the formulas you'll see all the time. Sometimes they might call it HO for initial height. So let's say, for example, I am launching, I don't know, let's say I throw a baseball with an initial velocity of 80 feet per second, and I throw it at an initial height of 6 feet. The question is, when will it hit the ground? When will it hit? So when will it hit the ground? That's the question. So in this situation, I'm going to use this formula here. I'm going to say, oh, negative 16t squared. The initial velocity is 80t, plus the initial height is 6, because I'm 6 feet tall, and I let it go right at the top of my head. I want to know when that will equal 0. So the question is, when will it hit the ground? Well, we're going to set it equal to 0. If they would have asked, when does it reach 100 feet? Well, then we would have put 100 feet in there. But I want to know when it hits the ground. Okay, so our A is going to be at negative 16, our B is 80, and our C is 6. Now we're ready to sing the quadratic formula. Here we go. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared. That's 6,400 minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. Okay, good. Now let's go ahead and work on simplifying the root here. That's going to be negative 80 plus or minus the square root of 6,400 minus, I'm using my calculator here, 4 times negative 16 times 6. I get 6784 all over negative 32. Now, we don't want to say that this is our answer, because this is a word problem and that would not make any sense. Hey, how long does it take you to get to Walmart? The answer is negative 80 plus or minus square root of 6784 all over 9. No, you don't want to say that this is our answer. We're going to need to go to a decimal. So I'm going to go ahead and do the square root of 6784 and get the decimal value. That's negative 80 plus or minus 82.37 all over negative 32. And then what we'll do is we'll do the minus value and the plus value to get an answer. So here we go, negative 80 minus 82.37. I'm going to find out what that is. That's negative 162, negative 162.37 all over negative 32. Now I divide that by negative 32 and I get the answer of 5.07. Now let's do the plus answer. Negative 80 plus 82.37. Push enter and divide by negative 32. And this answer is going to be weird because it comes out to be a negative number. And a negative number wouldn't make sense for this problem here. So we're just going to throw it out. And we get negative 0.07. And so 5.07 is actually our answer. That ball is going to be in the air for 5.07 seconds if under that situation. So we can do physics with the quadratic formula. The last part of our lesson today is going to involve graphing quadratics. All quadratics are going to be a parabolic shape. They may be facing up or they could also be facing down. That's a possibility as well. There are a couple key points that we care about when we graph parabolas. This is one of them right here, the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts. We do care about the x-intercepts, and when you're graphing a parabola, that should be the first thing you find. Step number 1, we need to figure out when it equals 0. If I was graphing x squared plus 5x plus 4, and I wanted to know where the x-intercepts are, I would set it equal to 0. And how would I solve this? Oh, you bet! The quadratic formula! Yeah! Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So that's step 1 when graphing. Use the quadratic formula. Use quadratic formula to find the x-intercepts. That's the first thing we'll always do. Okay? Step number 2, another thing we care about on this graph is right here, the y-intercept. The y-intercept. Now that y-intercept, that's pretty easy to find. If you're looking for the y-intercept, all you have to do is plug zeros in for the x's. Plug 0 into all x's, to find the y-intercept, okay? So that's step 2. The last thing that we care about is this value right here in green. Oh, it's called the minimum, or it's actually called the vertex, and it's either going to be a minimum or a maximum. It'll be a maximum if it's pointed upside down. See, here's the vertex, and it's a maximum point. We do care about finding the vertex. And to find the vertex, there is a kind of a pattern here. You have to find negative b over 2a. So what we'll do is actually use the quadratic and plug in negative b over 2a. That gets us our x value. And then you'll plug that back in to find the y value of the vertex. That's how we find the vertex. So we're going to go ahead and work through one here and graph some quadratics. Okay, so let's say I need to graph y equals x squared plus 2x minus 8. Let's use our 3-step process here. Step number 1, use the quadratic formula to find the x-intercepts. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to let a equal 1, b equal 2, and c equal negative 8 to help me find my x-intercepts. So I'm going to do negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So that's negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, let's see here, 4 minus 4 times 1 times negative 8. Oh, it's 36. That's an even square root. I love when they're even. That's negative 2 plus or minus 6 over 2, because the square root of 36 is 6. Okay, so let's do negative 2. Let's do the plus version and the minus version. So negative 2 plus 6 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. And negative 2 minus 6, that's negative 8 divided by 2, is negative 4. Those are my x-intercepts. So I'm going to come to the x-intercept, and I'm going to mark an x-intercept here at 2 and an x-intercept here at negative 4. Yes. That is step number 1. Use the quadratic formula. Step 2 is to find the y-intercept. We can find the y-intercept just by plugging 0 in for all the x's. So it would be 0 squared plus 2 times 0 minus 8. Well, guess what? That's 0. That's 0. Negative 8 is the y-intercept. So I'm going to come down here and mark negative 8 as my y-intercept. Okay, now the last part is finding the vertex. The magic number to find the vertex is negative b over 2a. So let's see. And that would be the x part of the vertex is negative b over 2a. So that's negative 2 over, because b is 2, all over 2 times a. A is just 1 on this problem. So negative 2 divided by 2 times 1, well, that's just negative 1. So I know that the x part of the vertex is negative 1. Now we just plug that back in here and here to get the y. Let's try it. It would be negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 minus 8. Let's see, negative 1 squared is 1, and 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 minus 8. That comes out to be negative 9. So my vertex is negative 1 from the x, and the y is this negative 9. So I go over negative 1 and down negative 9 to get the vertex. And so I know that's the lowest point. And so it's going to come up and look like that. That is how we graph a parabola. 3-step process. Use quadratic formula to find the x-intercepts. Plug a 0 into all the x's to find out what the y-intercept is. And then use negative b over 2a to find the x part of the vertex. And plug that back into the original to get the y part of the vertex. It's time for you to try. Let's go. And now it's your turn. Let's have you guys do y equals negative x squared plus 4x minus 3. You need to graph this one. Pause your video now and let's see how you do. Good luck. Welcome back. Let's do it. First thing we do is a quadratic formula. My a is negative 1, my b is 4, and my c is negative 3. Let's sing the song. negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, that's 16, minus 4 times a, that's negative 1 times 3, negative 3, all over 2a, that's negative 2. I got to simplify the root. Let's see, that's 16 minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 3. That's a little tricky. Oh, it comes out to be 4. Yes, I love when they're even. Okay, square root of 4 is just 2, so we get negative 4 plus or minus 2 over negative 2. Ah, my last problem's still there. Okay, let's do the plus answer. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2, and then divided by negative 2 is positive 1. Okay, and then negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6, and divide that by negative 2, that comes out to be positive 3. So I've got two x-intercepts, one here at 1 and one here at 3. That's cool. Okay, so we use the quadratic formula to get the x-intercepts. Let's plug 0 into this formula. If I plug 0 here and 0 here, I just get negative 3. So my y-intercept is here at negative 3. Now I need to find the vertex. To find the vertex, we have to use that formula, which is negative b over 2a. Negative b over 2a. That's the x part of the vertex. Negative b, that would be negative 4 over 2 times a is negative 1. So that comes out to be negative 4 divided by negative 2. That comes out to be 2. So the x part of the vertex is 2. And now we just plug that back in to find the y vertex. So let's see, that would be negative 2 squared plus 4 times 2 minus 3. Let's see, negative 2, that's negative 4, negative, because 2 squared is 4, and it's got a negative in front of it. 4 times 2 is 8, so plus 8 minus 3. Well, that comes out to be 1. And so our vertex is at 2, 1. I go over 2, up 1. You should be aware that this is negative, and if the a value is negative, it'll be pointing down. You can kind of see that here. This one points down. And that is our parabola. Well, that's it for this lesson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. This is Brother O signing out.